Namaste and Asham Karomi yad Yushmakam Sanskritadhyanam Samyak Prachalati. Now the word Yushmakam, which is that informal Yushmat Padam, can also be replaced with Bhavatam if it's masculine formal, as well as the Bhavatam will also be used if it is masculine and feminine mixed. Or you can say Bhavatinam. Tari Bhavatam Bhavatinam va संस्कृताध्ययनं सम्यक् चलति इति पूर्णविश्वासः अस्ति. It's not just a prashna. अहं विश्वासं करोमि यत् सम्यक् एव पठन्ति संस्कृतम्. अस्तु. So I sincerely hope that your studies are going on well. We've been looking at various aspects of the language and the upasargas in the last lecture. In today's lecture, which is also part of module 3, which is a revision of the upasarga and the sandhis, this is lecture number 9. And we are going to be looking at a revision of the Swara Sandhi that you've looked at earlier on in the intermediate course, but here we look at Swara Sandhi along with the sutras. So, kinchit yatah advanced asti, itopi kinchit tatra bhashayam gabhira praveshah atra aham karayami. So, the concepts that will be covered here are, we'll look at very briefly at the Maheshwara Sutrani or the Shiva Sutras, and then try and understand the Sandhis, its prerequisites, different dimensions, definition, types of sandhis, and then also look at the Swara Sandhi Bhedaha, because we are focusing on the Swara Sandhi in this lecture. So the types of Swara Sandhis, about 8 of them, with the sutras and examples. And there will be a revision of the table with the important Swara Sandhis there. In fact, all the Swara Sandhis will be there in that table. And then we'll do a conversation for building your vocabulary and an application of the points to learn. So we'll be inviting you to participate along with us. So please be ready for that and listen carefully to the lecture. And then we have at the end verses defining and classifying Dhanam, which is the next quality in the series of qualities that are required for the practice of Dharma. To close, we have Sri Aurobindo's quote on the qualities of the Vaishya Shakti, which he associates with the value of Dhanam. So here you have the Maheshwara Sutrani or the Shiva Sutrani, and I'll be giving this to you in the beginning of each of the lectures for the Sandhis, because it's important for you to connect once more to this meta language that he's created using these reorganization of the letters. Ataha kripaya yadi shaknuvanti etad mukhastam kurvantu. Maheshwara Sutrani chaturdasha eva tatra pratyaharaha santi. Only about 14 sutras are there. Ataha mukhastam karotu. Then you'll be able to connect with all the different pratyaharas that are spoken of in the course of the lecture and the course of the sutras. So the Sandhi, what is the prerequisite knowledge for understanding Sandhi, which literally means a joining. So what is it joining? Because the moment you say joining, you have to say what is it joining, right? So here it is joining the sounds. Which sounds? The last sound of the previous word and the first sound of the next word. So when these sounds combine, then what is the dynamics that follows? And that is what the Sandhi concept is all about. And what we will notice very interestingly is the similarities that these relationships have with human relationships. So, but in order to do the Sandhi well, you have to be familiar, very familiar with the alphabet, its classifications, as well as the ability to do Varna Vishleshanam, which is the ability to separate each and every letter from a word without breaking the sequence. So, for example, you have, let's see the first one, which is A plus K plus A. So, K plus A becomes Ka. And sh plus a plus ha at the end, the visarga becomes shaha. So what's the word? Akashaha. Uttamam. Atra pashyatu. Akashaha. So what I would suggest is, before you look at the second part, try and see if you can, just by looking at the letters, put it all together and see which words are formed out of that. Now this is an important faculty because you have to be able to identify that very last sound and identify the very first independent sound, so that when you combine it, you know how they will interact with each other. Moving on, you also need to do the Varna Sanyoga. We did Varna Vishleshanam, the separation, and you need to do the Varna Sanyoga, which is the ability to join each and every letter of a word without breaking the sequence. As you can see, Akashaha, Krishnaha, etc. I'll not go on because it will be good fun if you try to do the first part and then move on to the second one. I just mentioned to you about the different dimensions of Sandhi and how they correspond to the different types of partnerships. So here you have, for example, in some cases, you have the joining of two letters. And this joining of two letters is like a harmonious marriage where there is no compromise and both the partners retain their strengths. So you have Mahan Utsavaha, put them together. So N and U, Mahan Nutsavaha. So your focus really has to be on that last point. You really have to be able to put your attention on that last part. Okay. Now, there is another kind of a combination which is where the previous letter is modified, where the older partner, and I'm saying older here not because of anything else, but just because it comes before. That's the only reason. So the older partner concedes and tries to become like the other. So Utcharanam. So Utcharanam. You see there is a ch that becomes the t kara becomes a ch. So Ut was a upasarga for upward movement. Charanam is the pronunciation. You put it together, it becomes that which comes forth as a pronunciation. Then you have the second letter where the second letter is modified. Now, in this case, because it's a second, I've said the younger partner concedes. So you have Yach plus Na becomes Yachya. Okay. And then you have the following one, which is where both letters undergo modifications. This is like a marriage with a mutual compromise. So you have Tat Shatam, put it together, becomes Tat Chatam. Now, I would also like to help you to try and figure this out. So, one of the ways of getting familiar with Sanskrit really is to have the oral part of it, the phonetic part of it. So, many of these words, if you say them really fast, you will see that it will end up becoming the Sandhi combination that they have shown you here. Astu, Atha, yadi shighram shabdam kathayanti, shabdadvayam kathayanti chet etadrisha rupam avashyameva milati. Iti asti. Atah sambhashanam tu avashyakam asti punarapi. Let's move on. You've got where a new letter comes in between. That's a bit like a love triangle where you have pari plus chada becomes parichadaha. So cha together, parichadaha. And then you have in the next case where sometimes there is an omission of the previous letter. That's a bit like the older partner passing away or going out of the picture. So you have saha agataha becomes sa agataha. And then you have the enhancement of the previous letter where the younger silently supports the older one. So you have sakhe atra, sakhetra. So these are all the different ones, but like I said, it's very amusingly reflective of the way human relationships also take place. Let's look at some definitions of Sandhi. So the first definition that we have here is Kaha Sandhihi. So Varnanam Ati Shayitaha Sannithihi Sandhihi. So Varnanam, letters, Ati Shayita, when you really bring them very, very close, Ati Shayita Sannithihi, proximity, that is Sandhihi. So what is Sandhehe Phala Chatushtayam? What is the result of that? So the result of that, as we've seen earlier on, but here with the technical terminologies. So you can have an Adeshaha. So in the Adeshaha, it's more like a replacement. So Yadi plus Api, there is a replacement that takes place. And that is your Shatruvat. Alright. In the Agamaha, you have Patan plus Asti, Patan Nasti. There is a new sound that has come in. And that is Mitravat. So it's adding to it. And then you have another possibility which is a Lopa or an absence. So you have Ubhau Api becomes Ubha Api. The au is gone and replaced by the akara. And then you have the Prakriti Bhavaha where it retains its original form. So you have Hari Etau. It might look like nothing is happening, but there are rules behind that. But the final form is Hari Etau, no difference to their original form. Let's move on to the next one, which is the Sandhehe Prayoga or the applications. So we've got Sanhitaika Pade Nitya Dhatupa Upasarga Yoho. So Sanhita Pade, wherever it's combining, you retain both the, even this is true, so, and even the other form is true, and in the context of the dhatu and the upasarga, you have this. And then the next one is Sutre Samase Shloke Cha Vakye Satu Vivakshaya. Okay, that's your whole shloka there. So it says Sanhitaika Pade Nitya Dhatu Pasarga Yoho. Sutre samase shloke cha vakye satu vivakshaya. What happens in this case? You can also have another reading here, which is Sutre shwapi tatha nitya saivanyatra vibhashaya. Okay, which is a bhinna patha, that's a separate reading, and this is from the Vyakarana Kaumudi. And what does it say here? It says that you have in different cases, sandhitaika pade, wherever there is a joining, nitya nitya in the dhatu and the upasargayo, you can have the forms that remain, or in the sutre, samasa, shloka and the vakya, you can have these sandhis that take place. So, what are the compulsory ones? You see that in ekapada. So, when there is ekapada, when there is one word, then you have to do the sandhi. So, you have ne plus ana. By a certain sandhi rule, you will get nayana, which is the I. Then you have the dhatu sargayoho. So it is nihi plus gachati, nirgachati, compulsory again. Sutre, echo yava yavaha. You see, echaha, I, av, aya, and or I and av. Okay, these are all the combinations there, but we look at it when we come there. And then you have samase. So in the samasaha, you have devasya alaya, devalaya. You have to do. You have to always do. That's why nitya, nitya twice it said. And then shloke. So this is a shloka that we've seen last time with the upasargas, and you see that it is to be done. Where is it optional? It's only optional in the vakyam. So vakye. Kaha atra asti, you can either say kotra asti or just kaha atra asti. Astu? Moving on to the sandhi bhedaha or the types of sandhi. So we've got the swara or the ach sandhi, we've got the vyanjana or the hal sandhi, and we have the visarga sandhi. Astu. Tari, what is the swara sandhi? Tari swara sandhi kaha? Swarasya sthane adeshaha swara sandhi. So in the place of the swara, when there is a particular assignment, something has been assigned, that is known as swara sandhi. Swara sandhi bhedaha. So what are the swara sandhi bhedaha? So swara sandhi kaha? Swarasya sthane adeshaha swara sandhi iti we have just looked in our previous slide. But what are the bhedaha? There are 8 kinds of differences or that are there, and these differences are the yan sandhi, yantavanta desha sandhi, guna sandhi, vriddhi sandhi, savarna dirgha sandhi, purva rupa sandhi, pararupa sandhi, and prakriti bhavaha. We'll look at each one of these in greater detail. So, yan sandhi kim asti? So, this is one of my favorite ones where I'm trying to show the brilliance of Panini's grammar. Sutram asti iko yan achi. Okay, what is ik? So, if you go back, ik is when you go from a, I, un, ril, rik. So, a, keep a out, a, I, un, I, u, r, l. So, you've got a. When we are saying I, u, when we say I, you have to take all the varieties of the vowel possible. Astu? So, rasva, dirgha, and I, u, r, l. Astu? In this case, it's only the rasva and the dirgha that are there. So, what does it say? It says that ikaha yan bhavati. Okay, that's how you have to also. So, this the words that we did earlier on for practice come handy here, because although these are acronyms, they will still take on the grammatic forms that you've looked at with words. Astu tari atra kim bhavati? Ikarasya ach pare. So, one ach yada bhavati, achi pare. Ach kim asti? Vowels. So, if ik is followed by vowels, tasya kim bhavati? Yan bhavati. Tari atra table madhye piyushah bahut sundara rupena dattavan asti. So, atra I kim bhavati? Yakara bhavati. Or I tasya yakara bhavati, u tasya vakara, r tasya rakara, l tasya lakara. Bhavati ach anantaram. Okay. So, what does that mean? So, you have yadi appi. So, you've got yadi. Break it down. Varna vishleshanam karotu. The plus I bhavati. Aham ekam kritva darshayami how you do it, so that it will be easy for you. Okay. So, let's do it with the varna vishleshanam. So, you have got ya, yadi plus appi. Okay. Let's do the varna vishleshanam. So, it's y plus a plus d plus I plus a plus p plus I. Astu? Now, where do we do the sandhi? So, we said when the two words are meeting. So, E and A are meeting. And what is this rule telling you? That if E is followed by an ach, in this case it is the A, it will become a Y. Huh? So, there is an adesha there. Okay, and that's why we said that the adesha is almost shatruvat, because it's replacing the ikara here. Tari kim bhavati atra? So, you've got the plus y plus a and then the rest of it p. So, what happens to this combination here? It becomes the dya. Astu? So, you get ya, dya and then p. So, yadyapi. So, ataha, you need to be very, very conscious, and for that, I think what the sandhi really teaches us in terms of a psychological benefit is patience and attention to detail. Because if you are just wanting to get it right or just anxious and you're just wanting to say something, doshaha bhavitum arhati. Ataha yada sandhi karyam kriyate tatra bahu mandam avadhanena saha antima aksharam prathamaksharam cha drishtva tayoho sandhim karaniyam bhavati. Okay, tari let's do the next one. Let's see if you've got it. So madhu arihi kim bhavishyati? So ukara asti, next one akara asti, the ukarasya v bhavati plus akara bhavati, ataha atra ma dhva rihi. Astu, got it? Madhvarihi. Next one, pitr and anshaha, pitranshaha. Next one, Pratnam Kurma, lr plus akritihi kim bhavishyati? Idanu lr kim bhavati? Lakara bhavati. Agrimaksharam kim asti? Akara asti. Ataha kim bhavishyati? Lakriti. Spashtam? Huh? So, this is how you have to proceed with the sandhis. The next sandhi is yantavanta desha sandhihi, and the sutram that is used for it is echo yava yavaha, the one that I had mentioned earlier on. Okay, but here we look at what it implies. So, what is it saying? It's saying H. What are the letters for A? A, I, O, Au. Okay, those are the letters that imply H. And what happens that after a swara, it will get these following combinations, adeshas, which are I, A will become I becomes I, O becomes Av, and Au tatra Av iti bhavati. Pashyama tasya application kim asti? Yatha phale plus ichha, phala yichha. Tari kim bhavati? Let's do it very, very step by step in one case. So, atra asti. So, phala, lakarasya kim asti? So, la plus A. Okay, phale, lakarasya. Okay, and then E. Atra kim agachati? A sthane ay bhavati, right? So, atra ay replace karotu. And atra E asti. So, now etad gachati, tasya sthane adeshaha agachati, phala yichha. Astu spashtam asti atra. Or you can have phala ichha, where the last consonants drop off and it becomes phala ichha ityapi sambhavam asti. And now you have the next one, tasmai etat. I would suggest try and do it by yourself. Anantaram atra pashyantu. Tari kim bhavati? Tasmai. Tari I bhavati. Tasma etat. Tasma etat. Punaha asti guro utsaha. Kim bhavati? Rukaras, okarasya. Av bhavati. Tari gurav utsaha. So here you see that this is a very typical mistake that people tend to make. So we've kept it here to show that atra guru vutsaha na bhavati. The ukara will go because guru ukara gachati tasya sthane adesha rupena av agachati. Gura av ut. So gura vutsaha and the gura utsaha. Idanim bhavatam etad varam asti. Tari pratnam karotu. Tau ekada. Kim bhavati? Ta, correct? Au sthane av agachati plus ekada. Ataha kim bhavati? Tave kada. Okay, that goes on there. Tave kada. Or alternatively, tav, ta, vakara drop bhavati, and then ekada. Spashtam? Tari etadasi echo yava yavaha. Astu? Agre gachama. Guna sandhi. Sutram asti ad gunaha. किम् अस्ति तत्र अ और आ प्लस इ और ई तस्य गुणः भवति तर्हि ए भवति अ और आ प्लस उ और उ ओ भवति अ और आ प्लस ऋ और ऋ अर् भवति पुनः अ और आ प्लस ऋ अल् इति भवति यथा अत्र उप प्लस इन्द्रः उप अकार प्लस इकार उपेन्द्रः तर्हि गुण प्लस उपेतं वदतु किं भवति उत्तमं गु नो पेतम् अस्तु गुणोपेतम् उत्तमं नेक्स्ट ब्रह्म प्लस ऋषिः ब्रह्मर्षिः अस्तु अत्र सन्धि वियोगः क्रियते नाम वर्णयोगः क्रियते पुनः तत्र वर्णविच्छेदः अपि यदा करणीयं देन् यु से सन्धि विच्छेदः सो यू हैव टू बी एबल टू ब्रेक अप ब्रह्म ऋषिः and know that it is Brahma plus Rishi. So both things have to be learnt. So logic asti atah sambhavam bhavati tatra. Moving on. Vriddhi sandhi, that's the fourth one. Sutram asti vriddhir echi. Vriddhir h. Again h agachati. H kim asti a slash a plus a plus I and a slash a plus o plus au. Kim bhavati tatra? I bhavati उत औ भवति यथा एक प्लस एकम एकैकम तस्य प्लस ओदनः किं भवति उत्तमं तस्योदनः अत्र बहु लॉजिक अस्ति इफ दिस देन दैट पूर्ण संस्कृत भाषायां केवलम् एतादृश यदि एतत् तर्हि तत् यदि तर्हि इत्येव युक्तिः प्रयुक्ता भवति अस्तु पुनः अत्र अ आ और र आर भवति एंड अत्र अ आ प्लस लृ आल भवति यथा अप प्लस ऋच्छति अत्र अपार्च्छति स्पष्टं नाउ उप प्लस लृकारीयते ल्रियति सो लृकारीयति किं भवति उपाल्कारीयति स्पष्टमस्ति अतः तत्र सावधानतया करणीयं भवति अग्रे पश्यामः पंचमं सवर्ण दीर्घ संधिः किं भवति सूत्रमस्ति अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः तर्हि अक् किमस्ति तत्र अक् एतत् सर्वम् अ आ इ उ ऋ तत्र पर्यन्तं तर्हि तस्य सवर्णे समानवर्ण यदा भवति तदा दीर्घीकरणं भवति तावदेव अत्र अस्ति अ और आ भवति इ इति भवति उ इत्येव भवति एंड ऋ तत्र दीर्घमेव भविष्यति अस्तु तर्हि अत्र यथा शश प्लस अंकः शशाङ्कः उत्तमं विक्रम प्लस आदित्यः वदतु विक्र सो विक्रमादित्यः नामः परिचितः अस्ति स मादित्यः दया प्लस अर्णवः दयार्णवः उत्तमं महा प्लस आशयः महाशयः अस्माकं भारते एक बहु प्रसिद्धः नाम अस्ति महाशयः इति लहरी महाशयः इति अतीव उन्नतस्तरीयः एकः योगी आसीत् गृहस्थः किन्तु योगी बहु उत्तमकथाः सन्ति तस्य जीवनयुक्तं तर्हि कदाचित् यदा इच्छा भवति अवश्यं लाहिरी महाशय विषये अवश्यं पठन्तु पुनः रवि प्लस इन्द्रः किं भवति रवीन्द्रः उत्तमम् अधि प्लस ईश्वरः अधीश्वरः शची प्लस इन्द्रः शचीन्द्रः सती प्लस ईशः उत्तमम् एतत् नाम सर्वे अपि जानन्ति सतीशः very familiar with the name but now you know that it's not a single name it's not just a single word it is actually composed of sati plus ishah astu next atra pashyama pitr plus rinam pitrunam astu yatha asmakam pancha rinani bhavanti tatra pitrunam the rinam or the gratitude or debt we have to our forefathers iti atra darshitam asti next vidhu plus udayah vidhudayah लघु प्लस ऊर्मिः लघूर्मिः उत्तमं वधू प्लस उत्सवः शीघ्रं वदन्तु वधूत्सवः स्वाभाविकमेव भवति तर्हि वधूत्सवः यदा लक्ष्मी गृहे आगच्छति तदा वधूत्सवः अवश्यः करणीयः अस्तु नेक्स्ट सरयूर्मिः सरयूर्मिः उत्तमम् अस्तु तर्हि अग्रे गच्छामः अत्र षष्ठमा अस्ति षष्ठः अस्ति सो इट्स् द पूर्वरूपसन्धि द सिक्स्थ वन इज द पूर्वरूपसन्धि सूत्रम् एङः पदान्तादति अस्तु तर्हि अत्र किं भवति एङ् अत्र अस्ति ए ओ एव अस्ति अनन्तरं तस्य अकार यदि सति किं भविष्यति अन्ते अपि अन्तेपि the last option that we had seen where the second the younger partner supports the older one प्रभो अनुग्रह किं भवति प्रभोनुगृहाण it's not I said it wrong that one could have been anugraha also but atra anugrahana so prabhonugrahana astu agre pashyama so you've got the pararupa sandhi atra pararupa sandhyam kim sandhau kim bhavati सूत्रम अस्ति एङि पररूपम एङ पुनरपि अत्र अस्ति ए ओ अस्ति पररूपम भविष्यति तर्हि किम् अस्ति अत्र अकार प्लस ए यदि भवति तर्हि ए एव तिष्ठति चेंज न भवति अत्र पुनः अकार प्लस ओकार एव तिष्ठति इत्युक्ते प्र प्लस एजते प्रेजते एकार तत्र योजितं भवति उप प्लस ओषति उपोषति उपोषति अस्तु स्पष्टम् उत्तमम् अग्रे गच्छामः अस्तु तर्हि अन्तिमम् अत्र भवति प्रकृतिभावः निमित्ते सत्यपि सन्धिकार्याभावः प्रकृतिभावः सो निमित्ते सत्यपि इवन इफ देयर इज एन opportunity but सन्धिकार्य अभावः प्रकृतिभावः सो देयर इज नो सन्धिकार्यं तत्र अतः प्रकृति यथा अस्ति तथैव तिष्ठति एक स्थानमस्ति प्लुतस्य स्वरे परे नित्यं प्रकृतिभावो भवति सूत्रमस्ति प्लुतप्रगृह्या अचि नित्यं तत्र किं भवति यथा फॉर एग्जांपल पश्य गुरो प्लस एष मां ताडयति दिस पर्सन इज बीटिंग मी पश्य गुरो अत्र गुरो तथैव तिष्ठति तत्र भेदः न भवति पुनः द्वितीय स्थाने भवति प्रगृह्यस्य स्वरे परे नित्यं प्रकृतिभावो भवति सूत्रम् ईदूदेद् द्विवचनं प्रगृह्यम् सो ईदूदेद् द्विवचनं प्रगृह्यम् अस्ति एग्जाम्पल्स यथा उदाहरणं कवि प्लस एतौ कवि एतौ गुरु इमौ किं भवति गुरु इमौ गुरु इमौ तथैव तिष्ठति भेदः न भवति अनन्तरं लते प्लस एते लते एते इति अस्तु तर्हि स्वरसन्धि भेदाः वयं दृष्टवन्तः एतावता Now let's look at a revision of the table with all the important swara sandhis. Etadapi purvam bhavantah drishtavantah sandhi. So if you've done the intermediate course, you would have come across this table. Atra. So this is a table where we are trying to just present all the different possibilities, permutations and combinations of the letters. Astu. And atra for example, eka udaharanam atreva vartate purvasmat. Tatra asti tatra kim bhavati? Tatra asti yada pashyama tari tatra और आ प्लस ओ और आ इति भवति तत्र कः किं सूत्रं भवति सो अत्र द न्यू फीचर दैट वी आर एडिंग इज टू ट्राई एंड रिकॉग्नाइज द सूत्र किं सूत्र भवति सो दीर्घः भवति किम् अस्ति तत्र अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः इति सूत्रं भवति उत्तमम् अनन्तरं का प्लस अ किमपि यदि शब्दं पश्यामः का अस्ति तत्र का अस्ति एव भवति का आगच्छति एव समानस्थलम् अस्ति अस्ति प्लस अत्र किं भवति अस्ति तर्हि इकारस्य प्लस अत्र अस्ति प्लस अस्त्यत्र तर्हि किं भवति तत् किं सूत्रमस्ति इको यण् अचि उत्तमम् अग्रे गच्छामः अत्र इदानीं समानमपि अस्ति किन्तु अत्र पूरितं वर्तते सो वाट् यू केन् डू इस् take this one यदि भवन्तः इच्छन्ति एतस्य एकं प्रिंट आउट स्वीकृत्य कारणं पीपीटी अपि मिलति so take a print out and try and fill it by yourself first and try and see if you can recognize what are the different sutras यस्य उपयोगः तत्र भवति एतदेकं फन एक्सरसाइज एक्टिविटी रूपेण भवितुम् अर्हति अनन्तरम् एतद् दृष्ट्वा पश्यन्तु यदि सम्यक् अस्ति वा न वा. So you can look at this to verify whether you got it right. Okay, so te plus a, so you've got te plus a becomes tepi. Astu tepi tatra kim asti? एङः पदान्तो दति. अस्तु, ए तद् भवति तत्र. नेक्स्ट अस्ति अस्माकं व्यय प्लस आ. सो व्यय आ तत्र व्याया गच्छति. ओके, प्लस आगच्छति. व्याया गच्छति. तर्हि तत् किम् अस्ति? तत्र एचो यवा यावः इति सन्धिः भवति. स्पष्टं? बिकास् ऐ अन्तः भवति and आ स्टार्ट् भवति. अतः यू कैन connect with that echo yava yavah sutram. And here atra there are some exercises for you to do. So I'll let you try doing them, but atra not only answer them but also see if you can identify the sandhis that will come in the sutras that will be applied here. So para atma kim parama atma kim bhavishyati. Just to do one exercise. Parama atma kim bhavati atra? Paramatma तरी उत्तमम्. परमात्मा. अस्तु. तरी परमात्मा किम् अस्ति अत्र? अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः इति सूत्रं भवति. एवं कृत्वा लेट् मी सी इफ यू कैन डू द रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ड्स and see if you can identify. अनन्तरं यदि एतद् विषये चर्चां कर्तुम् इच्छन्ति तर्हि फोरम मध्ये अपि चर्चां कर्तुं शक्नुवन्ति. उतः यूट्यूब मध्ये अधः अस्ति तत्र ददतु and then we can see if we can respond to you. But the whole point of this is to make this interactive and make it fun. So it's like an exercise and तथा कुर्वन्तु. अस्तु, अग्रे पश्यामः. So let's look ahead. सम्भाषणम्. नमस्ते पीयूष, कथमस्ति भवान्? उत त्वं कथमसि?
प्रणामः आर्ये, कुशल्यास्मि आर्ये, भवत्याः अपि सर्वं कुशलं मङ्गलं वर्तते इत्याशं करोमि.
आम्, किञ्चित् कार्ये व्यापृता अस्मि, a little busy. तावदेव.
भवत्यद्य वर्गे किं किम् अपाठयत्?
अद्यत्वे तु सन्धीन् पाठयामि वर्गे.
तत्रापि भवती कस्य सन्धेः परिचयम् अकारयत्?
सन्धिषु सम्प्रति और अधुना इदानीं स्वरसन्धेः पाठः जातः. पश्यामः, अत्रैव केचन उपयुक्ताः सन्ति. पश्यामि, त्वं तान् ससूत्रं वक्तुं शक्यसि किम्? आरम्भतः दृष्ट्वा सन्धिविच्छेदसहितं च कथय माम्. के सन्धयः अत्र विद्यन्ते इति. यत्र च न अकरवं तत् कृत्वा वद. पूर्णं तिष्ठतु, पूर्णमपि मा करोतु, किन्तु द्वित्रि कृत्वा मां दर्शय.
आम् आर्ये. अस्त्वार्ये प्रयतिष्ये. तर्हि आरम्भ्यात् प्रयासं करोमि. कष्टमस्ति आर्ये. प्रथमं तु ममैव वाक्ये पश्यामि. कुशल्यास्मि आर्ये इत्यत्र कुशली अस्मि प्लस आर्ये. कुशल्यास्मि आर्ये इति संदर्भे कुशली प्लस अस्मि इको यनचि इति सूत्रस्य प्रयोगः अस्ति. अपरः तत्रैव इत्याशं करोमि इत्यत्र अपि इति प्लस आशम् इति सन्धिविच्छेदः भविष्यति.
उत्तमम्. अनन्तरं किम् अस्ति? इदानीम् अहं सर्वान् छात्रान् निमन्त्रयामि पीयूषेण सह स्वरसन्धेः प्रयोगान् अवचेतुं टु सिलेक्ट् कर्तुम्. अस्तु, अवचेतुं प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्तु. अस्तु पीयूष, अग्रे कथय. एकम् इतोपि एकम्. आम्, अनन्तरं किन्तु भवन्तः छात्रान् कथयामि. भवन्तः सर्वान् अपि अवगन्तुं प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्तु. वयं डिस्कशन् फोरम मध्ये स्थापयन्तु. वयं तस्य उत्तरं दास्यामः.
आम्.
तर्हि
तत्र प्लस अपि, तत्रापि, अत्र अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः.
आम्. तर्हि अत्र आरम्भते एकवारं. नमस्ते पीयूष, कथमस्ति भवान्? उत त्वं कथं? कुशली अस्मि आर्ये, भवत्याः अपि सर्वं कुशलं मङ्गलं वर्तते इत्याशां. समानं न? इति आशाम् अत्र इको यणचि इति वर्तते. आम्, किञ्चित् कार्ये व्यापृतास्मि अत्रापि अस्ति.
अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः.
सत्यं. तावदेव. अत्रापि सन्धि वर्तते किन्तु स्वरसन्धि नास्ति, अग्रे आगमिष्यति. भवत्यद्य सो भवति अद्य तर्हि तत्र किमस्ति
समानम्
इको यणचि इति भवति तत्र वर्गे किम् अपाठयत् अद्यत्वे तु सन्धिं पाठयामि तत्रापि तत्र अपि सवर्णे दीर्घः उत्तमम् अस्तु तर्हि अत्रापि पश्यतु अन्यदेकम् अन्तिमं कुर्मः किं कस्य सन्धेः परिचयम् अकारयत् परिचयम् अकारयत् अस्तु सन्धिषु सम्प्रति स्वरसन्धेः पाठः जातः पश्यामः किमस्ति तत्र अत्रैव सन्धिविच्छेदं करोतु अत्र प्लस् एव अस्तु
अत्रैव वृद्धिसन्धिः अस्ति
उत्तमम् उत्तमं
वृद्धिरेचि
आमामाम् अत्र गुणसन्धिः अस्ति
आम् अत् गुणः सूत्रमस्ति
सत्यम् उत्तमम् उपयुक्ताः सन्ति पश्यामि त्वं तान् सूत्रं वक्तुं शक्ष्यसि किम् उत्तमम् दृष्ट्वा अत्र किम् अस्माभिः कोऽपि सूत्रः एतत् त्यक्तम् अस्ति वा
नास्ति आर्ये
अत्र एकं सन्धि न कृतं मया अत्र अस्ति न प्लस् अकरवं किं भविष्यति संयोगः
नाकर्वम्
उत्तमम् अस्तु अत्र विरमामः भवन्तः कृपया एतद् दृष्ट्वा सन्धिविच्छेदं सन्धियोगं च कुर्वन्तु इति निमन्त्रणम् अस्ति
प्रणामः आर्ये
धन्यवादः पीयूष तर्हि इदानीम् अस्माकं वर्गस्य अन्तिमभागं प्रति गच्छामः सो द लास्ट पार्ट ऑफ आवर class generally but this is to do with the values that we are talking of in the context of dharma militva ekavaram pathamah क्षमा सत्यं दमः शौचं दानमिन्द्रिय संयमः अहिंसा गुरुशुश्रूषा तीर्थानुसरणं तदया did you recognize something there तीर्थानुसरणं तीर्थ अनुसरणम् अत्र समस्तपदमस्ति किन्तु तत्र तीर्थानुसरणं तत्र अकः सवर्णे दीर्घः इति भवति आर्जवं लोभशून्यत्वं देवब्राह्मणपूजनम् अनभ्यसूया च तथा धर्मः सामान्य उच्यते इति अस्तु अग्रे तर्हि इदानीं वयं दानम् इति पदस्य अर्थम् अवगच्छामः दानस्य लक्षणं किम् अस्ति So what's the general definition of Danam? So it is from the Garuda Purana, the Dana Dharma Nama, and it's the 51st Adhyayah. Kim asti atra Arthanam Uchite Patre Shraddhaya Pratipadanam Danantu Kathitam Tajnyahi Tatra ekam etad gachati visarga gachati because there is a visarga sandhi there. Tajnyair Bhukti Mukti Phala प्रदम अस्तु तर्हि एकवारम् अत्र सन्धि कोऽपि अस्ति वा न वा इति एकवारं शीघ्रं पश्यामः स्वरसन्धि मात्रं पश्यामः अत्र अस्तु सो अर्थानाम् उचिते पात्रे तर्हि अर्थानाम् उचिते पात्रे श्रद्धया प्रतिपादनं दानन्तु कथितं तज्ञैः भुक्तिमुक्तिफलप्रदं तर्हि अत्र तु अस्माकं नास्ति किमपि तत्र अस्तु बट लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द meaning. So meaning is giving wealth to material things. Arthanam, where to a worthy recipient. Uchite patre. How? With shraddhaya, with sincerity and dedication, is said to be danam. Tari tatra pratipadanam asti. Danantu kathitam. This is known as danam. Tajne. Who has said that? Knowers of truth. Tat jnahi. And which can result in devotion and liberation. So this is not devotion here, this is bhuktihi, so enjoyment. Alright, so it's bhukti, it's not bhakti. So it's bhuktir mukti phala pradam. So giving wealth or material things to a worthy recipient with sincerity and dedication is said to be the danam, by the nose of truth, which can result in either enjoyment and liberation for the giver. Agre pashyama. There is a classification of the different types of danam, which is the sattvika danam. In the Gita, he talks of the sattvika, rajasika and tamasika danam. Tari sattvika danam kim asti atra datavyam iti yad danam diyate nupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha Taddanam satvikam smritam. Gitayam asti saptadashe adhyaye vimshatitama shloka asti. Kim vadanti? The sattvic way of giving is to do it for the sake of the giving and the beneficence, and to one who does no benefit in return. And it is to bestow in the right conditions of time and place and on the right recipient who is worthy or to whom the gift can be really helpful. So even to figure that out needs a certain psychological maturity. Astu? And it also requires not just the intention of the giver to give. Just because I have to give is not the best reason to give. One has to also be able to recognize the need and the optimum utilization of that resource in order to give it there. Atra, just in terms of the sandhi we have here, datavyam iti, but it's not a swara sandhi. Yat danam, swara sandhi nasti, it's a vyanjana sandhi or a consonant, sandhi with a consonant. Diyate anukam anupakarine. So diyate anupakarine, tatra eka swara sandhi asti atra. Deshe kale cha patre cha tat danam. Tatra api sandhi asti. Satvikam smritam. Tat danam vyanjana sandhi asti. Astu, agre pashyama. Rajasam danam kim asti? Yattu pratyupakarartham phalamuddishya va punaha diyate cha pariklishtam taddanam rajasam smritam. Kim asti atra? It says that yat tu, break it up. So yat tu pratyupakarartham. Okay, in order to get a return. So prati upakaram. There is an extra ta tatra. Okay, prati upakarartham. Prati upakara. So pratyupakara. Kaha sandhi asti tatra? Uttamam. Iko yanachi. Prati upakaram artham. So tatra sandhi trayam asti. Prati upakara artham pratyupakarartham. Phalam uddishya. Tatrapi sandhi asti. Vyanjana sandhi asti tatra. Va punaha. Diyate cha pariklishtam. Okay. Dat danam. Punarapi tatra vyanjana sandhi asti. Tat danam rajasam smritam. Okay. That is the rajasika danam or rajasam danam. Sri Aurobindo says the rajasika kind of giving is that which is done with unwillingness and or violence to oneself. Pratyupakarartham, or with a personal and egoistic object. That is the pratyupakarartham. Phalam uddishya. So pratyupakarartham, it's not very favorable for oneself. As well, it is phalam uddishya. You want to get a result out of that. Or in the hope of a return of some kind. Okay. Pariklishtam tad danam. So this is the kind of rajasam danam. And let's move on to see what is the tamasika danam. So tamasam danam kim asti tatra? Shri Krishna tatra vadati. Adesha kale yad danam apatrebhyascha diyate asat kritam avajñatam tattamasam udahritam. So this is the 17th chapter, 22nd shloka. So atra kim asti? Adesha kale. Yat uchita deshe nasti na uchita kale asti. It's not at the right place or at the right time. Yat danam. Vyanjana sandhi asti tatra. Apatre. Again there is a Vyanjana sandhi there. Patrebhyaha cha visarga sandhi asti tatra. Diyate. So what is it saying? Yat danam. The danam that is done where? Apatre. One who is not worthy of that whatever gift you're giving or danam you're doing. Bhyaha cha. Okay. Patrebhyaha cha. Diyate. Asat kritam. Asat kritam. That which is not doing any good either. Avajñatam. That which is also not recognized. Tat tamasam udahritam. So atra kopi swara sandhi nasti. Astu agre pashyama etasya artham. Shri Aurobindo kathayanti. The tamasic gift is offered with no consideration of the right conditions of time, place and object. It is offered without regard for the feelings of the recipient and despised by him even in the acceptance. Astu. We think of danam as a simple virtue, as a virtue in all conditions. But in the Gita, there is this detailed discussion about the nuances of danam. And to understand that danam is taking place between two people. There is a giver and there is a receiver. So the attitude in which the giver is giving, the person to which he is giving, all of that plays an important role in determining the quality of the psychological condition of the giver. So and that needs a certain maturity to know what, when, to whom and where. Iti bahu mukhyam asti yada dana kalaha bhavati. and also then to understand whether it's coming from an egoistic perspective or it's coming from the perspective of somebody who's completely, I mean, one who's not conscious also in the giving. इत्यादि. अस्तु, तर्हि बहु चिन्तनस्य विषयः अत्र वर्तते. To conclude, a quote by Sri Aurobindo in his very interesting book known as The Record of Yoga, where for several years he maintained a detailed diary of his sadhana, just like a scientist would maintain the record of the outer world and its circumstances. He was doing psychological experiments and marking them with incredible amount of sincerity and dedication. तर्हि तत्र सः यदा वैश्यशक्तिः विषये वदति, he's talking of the Vaishya Shaktis, he's saying, so it is said about the Vaishya Shakti that this is a generic statement about Vaishya Shakti, that Danam Vyayah Kaushalam Bhoga Lipseti Vaishya Shakti. So Lipsa iti. You see, there is a sandhi, swara sandhi that is taking place there. Astu. Tari, Dana and Pratidana are the special dharma of the Vaishya. His nature is the nature of the lover who gives and seeks. He pours himself out on the world in order to get back what he has given, increased 100-fold. Vyaya or expense is his capacity to spend freely for this purpose without any mean and self-defeating miserliness in the giving. Kaushalam is the dexterity and skill which is able so to arrange the means, the equipment, the action as to produce the greatest results possible in the best arranged results. Law, arrangement, suiting of means to ends, of expenditure to return are the joy of the Vaishya. Bhoga is his object, possession and enjoyment, not merely of physical things, but all enjoyment, enjoyment of knowledge, of power, of giving, of service, comes within its scope. The Vaishya, purified and liberated, becomes the supreme giver and lover and enjoyer. Vishnu's Ansha, preserving and making the most of the world. He is the Vishnu Shakti, as the Brahmana is the Shiva Shakti and the Kshatriya is the Rudra Shakti. Astu. So with these few words, some references for you. I would like to mention that the Sandhi is being taken from the book Sandhi by Mahabaleshwar Bhatta Mahodaya for Sanskrit Bharati. It's an excellent book. Tesham uttamani pustakani santi. Avashyam tesham upayogam kurvantu. And etaduktva etasya abhyasasya bahu avasarah asti kurvantu asmabhir saha samparke bhavantu iti uktva atra viramami. Namaste.